What's going on, guys? It's the Draft Nerd, and it is Mock Draft Monday, so we're going to bring out another mock draft, and we're going to explore different scenarios. It is only February, so a lot can change, so let's just sit back and enjoy the ride, and without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, coming in at number 1, we got the Chicago Bears. Once again, I'm going Caleb Williams. If you want to hear me explain why I think the Bears should go Caleb Williams, just check out any of my other mock drafts. I go Caleb Williams here 99% of the time. It just makes financial sense to me. Moving on to number 2, we got the Washington Commanders. And with Dan Quinn as the new head coach, I don't think that changes much. I still think they go Drake May. They need to get a quarterback. Sam Howell's not the answer. He had a very weak ending to the season. I can't see them, keeping Sam Howell around when you got a chance to draft a guy like Drake May or maybe Jaden Daniels or hell, even maybe Caleb Williams. So I think you got to go quarterback there, and the best one on the board is Drake May in my opinion. Moving on to number 3, we got the Patriots, and last mock draft I went with Marvin Harrison. That wasn't very well received. A lot of Patriots fans wanted Jaden Daniels, and I think if I was a betting man, I would probably say that they're going to go Jaden Daniels, at least as of February 5th. So we're going to go with Jaden Daniels here, but I wanted to switch it up last week and go with another guy like a Marvin Harrison just to explore different possibilities. Moving on to number 4, we got the Cardinals, and I think this is the prime Marvin Harrison Jr. spot. The Cardinals don't really need tackle because when you're sitting at number 4, it's really between Marvin Harrison Jr. or one of the tackles. And I don't really think the Cardinals need a tackle. Now, they could trade down in that spot, but I don't think you pass on a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. He's a generational talent, in my opinion. Moving on to number 5, we got the Los Angeles Chargers, and this is where it gets a bit tricky. Some people like going Brock Bowers here. Some go Malik Neighbors, and others go either Joe Alt or Olufashanu. I'm personally stuck between Malik Neighbors and Joe Alt. Or if you're an Olufashanu guy, Olufashanu, but I'm more of a Joe Alt guy. So I go Malik Neighbors quite a bit here. I want to switch it up. I mean, Trey Pipkins at right tackle is not an ideal starter, in my opinion. So I think you could go Joe Alt. He would have to move from left tackle to right tackle, which isn't always the easiest transition. But with a guy like Joe Alt, who's really technically sound, I think he could make the transition. So we're going to go with Joe Alt here. Moving on to number 6, we got the Giants. And with Malik Neighbors still on the board, you got to go Malik Neighbors. It gets a little tricky if Chargers go Malik Neighbors at 5, and then you're stuck with either a tackle, maybe a trade down. It gets a little muddy in that situation for the Giants, but at number 6, Malik Neighbors still on the board. You go him 1,000%. Moving on to number 7, we got the Titans, and I think this is going to be my first, different pick, I'm going to say, and that's because we're going to have the Titans passing on Olufashanu and still taking a tackle and going Talise Fuaga. Now, before all the Titans fans come at me, Talise Fuaga really showed during Senior Bowl that he didn't even belong there. He was better than every other one on the field. Talise Fuaga is a very good run blocker. Titans love running the ball, even though I know they, kind of went through a coaching change. It's just in the Titans' DNA to run the ball. Talise Fuaga is a great run blocker. He's still a bit raw in pass protection, but I think he can. I have faith in him to be able to, improve on that once he gets to the NFL. So we're going to go Talise Fuaga here. This is kind of me just saying that Talise Fuaga could make a case to go as tackle 2 and maybe even tackle 1, getting closer to April. So we're going to have the Titans go Talise Fuaga and passing on Olufashanu. Moving on to number 8, we got the Falcons, and I usually like to go defender here, whether it's Dallas Turner, Jared Verse, maybe a Nate Wiggins, but I'm going to switch it up and do more of a fun pick, and I think just getting all the weapons in the world. I mean, Falcons fans have, had to sit through Arthur Smith and not wanting to use any of his weapons, and now with Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, and adding Rome Odunze to that lineup, oh man, whoever their quarterback is next season, whether that's maybe Desmond Ridder, whether you get a free agent, whether you trade for a guy like Russell Wilson, Justin Fields maybe, that's just going to be a fun offense with Drake London, Rome Odunze, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. As long as you got a competent quarterback to, disperse the ball to, I mean, that's just going to be a very fun team to watch. Moving on to number 9, we got the Chicago Bears. And I think this could be a potential trade down spot. I know Bears fans want to trade out of the number 1 pick. I don't see that happening, but I could see them trading out of this number 9 pick. Now the question is to who? And with Olufashanu still on the board and potentially the Jets, praying that he falls one more spot, we're going to have the Cincinnati Bengals moving up here. What am I doing? Cincinnati Bengals. And we're going to have them trading the 18th pick. And although this isn't going to, matter much in this mock draft video just because we're only doing one round, I could see them maybe potentially giving up the 49th pick. If not, maybe the 80th and like 115th, or the 80th and like a round 4 pick next year, something like that. But just for, video purposes, we're going to do the 18th pick and the 49th pick for the 9th overall pick. We're all for that through. All right. So now we got the Bengals picking at number 9, and they're going to jump the Jets, and they're going to take potentially the best tackle in the draft in Olufashanu. Getting Joe Burrow protection should be priority number 1. Jonah Williams, I believe, is a free agent, and if he isn't, he's still, not a starting caliber tackle, at least for a championship hopeful team. So getting Joe Burrow some protection, keeping him upright, and keeping him on the field is top priority for the Bengals, in my opinion. And now moving on to the Jets, this is where it gets a little tricky. Do you want to go with the tackle 4, which in this case is probably a guy like J.C. Latham, maybe an Amarius Mims, but I think that they're going to end up passing on tackle. And again, there's no receiver with Rome Odunze going to the Falcons, and Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison off the board as well. I think they could still get a weapon, and I'm going to have them going Brock Bowers. Now, I know they need a tackle. They could go J.C. Latham here, but I go tackle all the time for the Jets. So why not switch it up and just be a little fun? This mock draft is going to be fun. I'm going to switch it up, just kind of see how different situations play out. So don't get too mad. This is just more of an experimental mock draft just to see how different things could, play out. All right, moving on to 11, we got the Minnesota Vikings, and I think this could potentially be the first defensive player off the board. So we went 10 straight offensive players, which I don't think is, completely out of the picture. I do think that could happen just because this is a very top-heavy offensive class. But here at 11, you get your choice of any defensive player you want, whether that's a Nate Wiggins, Cooper DeJean, maybe a Dallas Turner, Jared Verse. And I'm going to have them going edge rusher this time just because they don't really have anyone on the outside of the edge rusher position. I mean, they've got Danielle Hunter, but he's getting up there in age, and I think he might even be a free agent, and I don't see them bringing him back. So why not get your choice of the best edge rusher in that class? And for me, that's going to be Dallas Turner, just because he's gotten the most upside. He might not be the most productive, year one, but he's got all the upside in the world, all the tools. He's super athletic, and I just think teams are going to fall in love with a guy like that. Now, moving on to number 12, we got the Broncos. And I think this could be a quarterback-needy team. Just with them benching Russell Wilson to end the season, it looks like they're going to want to move on from him. And if they don't get anyone in free agency, I think they got to draft one. And we're looking at either Bo Nix, a Michael Penix, or a J.J. McCarthy. And I know NFL teams are supposedly really high on J.J. McCarthy. I'm a Bo Nix type of guy. So we're going to go with Bo Nix here. I think he could thrive in a Sean Payton-led team. Moving on to 13, we got the Las Vegas Raiders. And I think this could be a cornerback pick. The question is, who is your top cornerback? Mine's Cooper DeJean, although I don't think he's going to be the first one off the board come April. I'm really between Nate Wiggins, Terrion Arnold, and Kool-Aid McKinstry, although Quinion Mitchell is making a case to be that number 1 corner after the Senior Bowl. But we're not going to go Quinion quite yet, although he is going to be going pretty high in my mock draft. We're going to have them going Nate Wiggins. He's just a super long athletic corner who can play both man and zone, so I think he's the overall best corner for a team that wants a coverage corner. Cooper DeJean's really good in run defense, but he some teams might not view him as a outside corner. Moving on to 14, we got the Saints, and we could go quarterback here for the Saints, but I think we're going to pass on quarterback and maybe try to get one in round 2. So with 14, I'm going to look to go offensive tackle, just because the Trevor Penning, drafting didn't go as planned. I was never a Trevor Penning guy, and he's been struggling so far in his NFL career. But also Ryan Ramczyk, could potentially, I'm pretty sure they have an out of his contract this offseason, so they could potentially offload his contract. So either way, I think tackle is a very possible pick here. And with J.C. Latham still on the board, I'm a bit lower on J.C. Latham. I'm not the biggest J.C. Latham guy, but The Saints need a tackle, and I'm not too mad at him going at 14. Moving on to 15 here, we got the Colts. And I think this is where I'm going to go with Quinion Mitchell. You know, the Colts love their big physical corners and athletic corners, and they got a guy like Juju Brents, but I don't think he's a number one style corner. I think Quinion Mitchell with his athletic upside could be a number one corner in the NFL, so we're going to go with Quinion Mitchell here from Toledo. Moving on to 16, we got the Seattle Seahawks, and I think this is where we're going to go J.J. McCarthy. I think that Geno Smith could serve one more year as a starter in Seattle and have J.J. McCarthy learn behind him. And Drew Lock's a free agent. I don't see him coming back. So having J.J. McCarthy learn behind a guy like Geno Smith for a season and then taking over after next season, I think he could be a very solid quarterback for him. And I feel like Seahawks fans are not going to like that pick, but it is what it is. Moving on to 17 here, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I think that they could look to go offensive line here. And I think they could look interior. Now, JPJ had a very, very solid Senior Bowl. I was always pretty high on JPJ. I had him as a fringe first-round guy. But I think he proved himself that he's a first-round guy, 100%. And I think he could make a push to be in that top 20 area. Now, like a team like the Jaguars really need a center. Because Luke Fortner was terrible last season. He was not great. So we're going to go with JPJ, the center from Oregon, to the Jacksonville Jaguars at 17. Moving on to 18, this is where we got the Bears. We had them trading down from 9 to 18, and I think that they still have one of the potential guys on the board now that they could have went at pick 9, and that's Jared Verse. I really like Jared Verse. I think he's a mix between potential and production. I think he's going to have solid production year one with also a higher upside than a guy like Leatu Latu does. So I'm going to go with the Jared Verse here, pairing him up with Montez Sweat. That's a very good edge rushing duo, and it's going to hopefully turn the Chicago Bears defense around. Moving on to 19, we got the Rams, and Cooper DeJean just feels like a Ram. He kind of feels like the Cooper Kupp of the defense. He's not the most athletic guy, or I'm not going to say Cooper DeJean's not athletic, but he's not the most loose-hipped type of guy. Like, I think Cooper DeJean struggles to flip his hips at times. But he's just a very instinctual, very smart guy on the defensive side of the ball. Just kind of like how Cooper Kupp is on the offensive side of the ball. So Cooper DeJean just seems like a Ram to me. So I'm going to go with Cooper DeJean there at 19. Moving on to 20, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think this could either be tackle. We could go Marius Mims, kind of have that storyline going with the Georgia teammates at both left and right tackle. But we could also go cornerback. They drafted Joey Porter Jr. in the second round last year. But they need another one. I mean, you need multiple corners on a team. And with a guy like Terrion Arnold still on the board or Kool-Aid McKinstry, I think you got to go one of those two players. And I think Kool-Aid McKinstry seems more like a Steeler than a guy like Terrion Arnold. Kool-Aid McKinstry is just a bit more physical. He's got a higher upside. So we're going to go with Kool-Aid McKinstry there at pick 20. Moving on to 21, we got the Miami Dolphins. And I think this is going to be offensive line. It's just whether we go with a guy like Jordan Morgan, maybe a Tyler Guyton, Troy Fatanu, wherever he's at. But I'm ultimately going to go with a guy like Amarius Mims. I do think Amarius Mims could start at tackle, especially with a guy like Teron Armstead who's always injured. But I would more like him to kind of, ride the bench for a year, kind of learn behind a guy like Teron Armstead, and then take over next year and just be a really solid left or right tackle, whichever one you want to place him at. So we're going to go with Amarius Mims here. Moving on to 22, we got the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Eagles need either a receiver, defensive back, or maybe a potential right tackle replacement for a year or two down the line once Lane Johnson retires. And with a guy like Terrion Arnold still on the board, he's fallen a bit. I think the Eagles are going to run to the podium and draft a guy like Terrion Arnold just because he's an athletic freak. He's got a lot of upside, and he can learn behind a guy like Darius Slay. And I know he's an Alabama defender. I know they prefer Georgia defenders, but Terrion Arnold's just too good to pass up on here at 22. Moving on to 23, we got the Houston Texans, and I think this is finally where the Jerzon Newton fall kind of stops. The Texans need interior defensive line. They could also go edge rusher here like a Leatu Latu if Jonathan Grenard does leave in free agency, but We're not going to really try to predict that. We're just going to go with Jerzon Newton just because they need interior defensive help regardless. So I think that's a great pick for the Texans. They get a really solid defender in Jerzon Newton. Moving on to 24, we got the Dallas Cowboys, and I've had them go Leatu Latu before here just because he's falling a bit. But we also got Brian Thomas here. Brandon Cooks wasn't great for the Cowboys. He also might not even be on the team next year. And we need to get a guy who can, take the attention off of a guy like CeeDee Lamb. And I think Brian Thomas is that guy. You could also go Troy Franklin. I love Troy Franklin, but I do think Brian Thomas is going to go ahead of Troy Franklin. And just getting that big type of athletic guy like a Brian Thomas, that's a dangerous offense for the Cowboys. Moving on here to number 25, we got the Green Bay Packers, and this is a bit of a tough pick here. We could do a trade, although I don't know who would want to move up. Maybe the Chiefs, but I think we're going to stick and pick here. Now, do we go tackle? Do we go cornerback? Or do we go... Leatu Latu's still on the board, but they did draft Lucas Van Ness last year, so I don't see them going there again when they still got guys like Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith on the team. So I think we're going to have them pass on Leatu Latu, unfortunately, and we're going to go with Ennis Rakestraw. I know the PFF guys love Ennis. I'm a bit lower on him, but I do see him going in the first round. So we're going to get the Packers some secondary help. They could also go safety there. They could have their pick of the safeties just because they're a bit thin there as well. But we ultimately are going to go with Ennis Rakestraw. Moving on to 26, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I think this is where the Leatu Latu fall is going to end. I go edge rusher there a lot, but usually Leatu Latu's not on the board here, so getting him and Yaya Diaby paired up is going to be really, really nice. Shaq Barrett's, on the decline. He's not the player he used to be, so getting a guy like Leatu Latu to replace him is a very good pick in my opinion. Moving on to 27, we got the Arizona Cardinals. We had them going Marvin Harrison at pick 4, and at pick 27, I could see them going defense, and we could go Braylon Trice, or we could go Byron Murphy, maybe a Chris Braswell. Darius Robinson's also a big riser, but I don't know if he's a first round type of player just yet. We're gonna go with Byron Murphy. He's been getting a lot of hype. People have him going top 15, and I'm not quite there yet, but I can get him in the back end of the first round. I can get that type of hype for him. So we're gonna go with Byron Murphy there. Moving on to 28, we got the Buffalo Bills, and Gabe Davis is probably going to be gone, so we got to get a receiver to pair with Stephon Diggs, even though maybe Stephon Diggs might be gone too, so who knows. But I think wide receiver is going to be the pick here. I was talking about him earlier. I really like Troy Franklin, my favorite player in the draft. If Stephon Diggs is there, him and Stephon is going to be a very nice pairing for Josh Allen to throw to. Moving on to 29, we got the Detroit Lions. And the Lions love running the ball, so why not get them a offensive lineman? Maybe get them a Jonah Jackson replacement. Jonah Jackson, he's serviceable, but if you got a chance to get a guy like Troy Fautanu, I think you do that. Running the ball is Detroit Lions' identity, so they got two really good running backs. Why not get another really good offensive lineman to help run the ball? Moving on to 30, we got the Baltimore Ravens. And this could either be a tackle pick, maybe a receiver pick, cornerback, although I don't think there's a solid corner still on the board. So we're going to go with tackle here. Ronnie Stanley's always a bit injured. He's always banged up. Moses Morgan is up there in age, although he has been playing solid. You can't play forever. So getting an offensive tackle, maybe not to start right away, but, they could start in a pinch. And a guy like Tyler Guyton, who's got a lot of upside, maybe not the most polished right away, but learning behind a guy like Ronnie Stanley and Moses Morgan would be really beneficial to him. Moving on to 31, we got the Kansas City Chiefs, and this is receiver 100%. The question is, who do you go here? I would have loved if Troy Franklin was still on the board here, but he's not. And Tez Walker has definitely played himself out of the first round. He's more of a late second, early third round type of guy for me now. A.D. Mitchell I really like. Keon Coleman is a fringe first round guy for me, but I'm going to go with A.D. Mitchell here. He's a big athletic speedster. who can catch the ball. That's the most important thing for the Chiefs right now, is a receiver that can catch the ball. And now moving on to 32, we got the last pick in the draft, and I know we didn't do a lot of trades. We only did one, but I don't know. There wasn't many trades I seen that made sense to me, so we're only going to do one trade. Sorry about that, but at pick 32, it looks like we're going to probably go with Braylon Trice. I think Braylon Trice is a first-round guy, and I don't see Chase Young returning to the 49ers because, I mean, he wasn't the best. I mean, he's going to want some money, and I don't think the Niners are going to want to pay him what he wants. So why not get a guy like Braylon Trice who could be better than Chase Young in like a year or two? So we're going to go with Braylon Trice there at 32. And that's going to do it. Let me know what you guys think. This was another pretty interesting one, and it's still only February, the beginning of February. So, you know, a lot is going to change, and I mean a lot. So I'm just exploring different avenues, different scenarios. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think I should have changed. And as always, if you liked the video, please consider subscribing. And this is the Draft Nerd, and thanks for watching.